Greetings, folks. Welcome. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thanks so much for joining us for the second of our three-part series called The Road to Zero Emission Trucks. It's a big deal. The focus today is on manufacturing of these trucks. We'll be taking a look at the future of electric trucks and manufacturing initiatives and incentives needed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Environmental Defense Fund, for supporting today's event. We're going to spend the next hour looking at policy initiatives that could move the needle on a number of fronts. Will trucks be built domestically? Where can these jobs be created? Are they really making a difference in our emissions? And the biggest question of all is, can the United States compete with foreign manufacturers on this track, so to speak? While plummeting battery prices and increased battery power are making EV trucks more affordable, the United States is really lagging behind in the race to make these vehicles and the batteries that go in them. Could the administration's proposed infrastructure plan pave the way forward for domestic production of electric trucks? Before we bring up our fantastic lineup of speakers to answer these questions and more, I've got a few housekeeping notes. First, you can tweet us at The Hill Events, so at The Hill Events, but more importantly is the hashtag The Hill E-Trucks. That's The Hill E-Trucks. We're broadcasting live and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. As with any live stream, you could experience occasional trouble, like I usually do with the video. Refreshing the page should fix the problem. I hope it works for you. We're kicking the program off with Jack Allen, the chairman and CEO of Proterra. Proterra designs and manufactures electric buses, electric charging systems, high-powered batteries, and software heavy-duty vehicles. And we've got the exactly right guy to talk to us today about this. Jack has spent over 30 years in the commercial truck industry, and we're delighted to have him with us today. Jack, great to meet you virtually online to learn more about this deep dive in truck. You know, when I first sort of heard this, and we talked to the Environmental Defense Fund about this sector, you know, a lot of people talk about cars, autos, but you know, trucks are a huge deal in the life of commerce in this country, the life of trade and export. And while we're talking about the transition today and what's needed to do it, you know, given your long experience in trucks, can you just tell our audience how vital a transition in the trucking sector would be, both to our emissions, but why we have to get this right?
It's great to be here. Thank you. So, you know, it's certainly, as you mentioned, commerce, you know, in the United States, transportation is so vital to that. In, you know, the vehicles that are on the road today have made great improvements in diesel emissions over the years. But the next frontier here is to move to zero emissions. And, you know, I happen to believe that this market is at an incredible inflection point, and the commercial vehicle market is ready to move towards electrification. You know, a company like Proterra, I mean, our mission is to develop EV technology to advance the world's best commercial vehicles. That's all we do is EV technology, and we've been doing it for years. We built our first transit vehicle over 10 years ago. And, you know, we're off and running. We're an established company. You know, the theme of this is manufacturing. We have manufacturing sites in place today building battery systems in Burlingame, California, and in Los Angeles. We build transit buses today in South Carolina and in Los Angeles. So we're committed to convert the commercial vehicle industry to electrification.
Well, look, let me ask you a question, Jack, and it may be out of left field, and tell me if it is so. But I look at this challenge of electrified trucks, electrified vehicles, and the emissions targets we have that we need to meet as you know, kind of along the lines of a national security issue. And so I hang out with Pentagon people, and they do simulations. And as you do a simulation, as you must do as a CEO of a publicly traded big company in this area, where are the strategic deficits? Where are the concerns you have in us making this transition? You know, sometimes, you know, when you talk to folks in the private marketplace, they can't do it all alone. There needs to be some parts of this that are met by government partnership and government investment. You know, how do you get this right? I want to give our audience an understanding that you know, gravity alone can't just take us there. We have to have some partnerships in this process.
Yeah, so you bring up a great point here. I'm a firm believer that the starting point to convert commercial vehicles to electrification starts with infrastructure. And if you just think about that intuitively, you know, how can a fleet make a conversion from diesel to electrification in any mass manner unless they're confident that they're going to have, you know, charging and infrastructure available when they need it? Because downtime is just, you know, it's the death of the commercial vehicle industry. So to me, one of the first places from a policy and a government standpoint would be a public-private partnership to really kickstart charging infrastructure in this country at the scale needed to convert commercial vehicles, so that when the fleets are ready to go and the battery technology is ready to go and the commercial vehicle manufacturers are ready to go, the charging is in place. I think that's the first place to start. I think a second place to start is on the supply base. Today, 75% of our transit vehicle is sourced here in North America, but that can go up, and it goes up with demand. It goes up with volume, so that domestic suppliers can see the opportunity to make investments in the commercial vehicle electrification space. There's a policy in place today. The ATVM policy is out there. It provides low-cost capital to invest in light-duty zero emissions. If we could expand that to heavy-duty, it would apply to companies like us. It would also apply to our supply base, and even would apply to battery cell manufacturers that today, for the commercial vehicle industry, all those cells are made foreign, and we really need those cells to be made here in North America, creating jobs and protecting our supply base. I think those are just a few things that could really kickstart the transition to electric commercial vehicles.
I did not know that about the battery production and the external dependencies. And as you know, we've coming out of this era where supply chain dependencies have become so much a part of the conversation. I'm sure I will raise this with Congresswoman Dingell in a moment. But I know that your company has teamed up. I think it's is it Roush Clean Tech? Am I saying that correctly? Roush Clean Tech and Penske Truck Leasing. All around this next generation Ford F-650. I've heard you've got some news on this.
Yeah. So today we announced really our 9th commercial vehicle partnership, and this is where we provide the battery system technology to a commercial vehicle manufacturer or an engineering integration company like Roush to allow them to rapidly electrify their commercial vehicles. So today we have partnerships with companies like Daimler on delivery vehicles and school buses, with Komatsu on construction equipment. We have 8 of them in total, and then as of today, with Roush and Penske as our partners, we've announced our 9th one.
What do we need to do on the manufacturing side of this that we're not doing? Are there, how do I put it, human capital needs, training? Are there pieces of this when it comes to jobs and that dimension that we could expand, or that we have to consider as we're thinking about, bolstering our manufacturing ability, across the EV set, but particularly within trucking?
Yeah, so these are great jobs. I mean, the jobs we have today, we have over 700 people that work at Proterra, either putting together battery systems or transit buses. These are skilled labor. These are jobs that start at $20+ per hour, that have 401k matching and health care. And in our company, we even provide stock options to all of our employees. So these are great jobs. It takes some training, obviously, to convert the employee from whatever industry they're coming out of. And the government's been very good about helping us with that training. But more of that is necessary to ramp up the EV commercial vehicle world.
Jack, we're taking questions in the audience, and I got a question from Andrew Johnston, who's Mobility and Analytics Growth Co-Lead. He probably knows about this stuff from Guidehouse. And he asked, what's your vision for an E-Fleet friendly corridors, which is an interesting answer, which was really talking about the broader set of infrastructure. A truck is not a truck without charging station, without corridors. So I'm trying to, in my own mind, begin thinking about what does the map and the footprint of all this look like. Maybe you could take us on a journey and describe that for us.
Yeah, that's really a great question, because where EV is starting today in transit buses and school buses and even in delivery vehicles, it's a little bit easier from an infrastructure standpoint, because the vehicles leave in the morning, they come back at night, and they get charged in a centralized depot. The challenge is what Andrew described, when you have a vehicle now that needs charging while they're en route. So that can be a over-the-road vehicle that's going from Cleveland to Charlotte, for example, and that's the infrastructure that we need to work on. And I do believe the way to start this is to pick 4 or 5 highly traveled routes across this country, and to focus the infrastructure in those. So say like I-5 from Seattle all the way down to Southern California. If we could electrify that route I think that's a great place to start.
Now, you were at Navistar for, I don't know, a couple of decades, I'm guessing right now. And let me just ask you a tough question. Now you're Proterra and seems very modern. But when you compare that world to, say, your peer in China or your peer perhaps in, a Scandinavian country, is the U.S. well set up, or are we behind? I mean, that was one of the questions I asked at the beginning of this. How do we rank up? And we don't have to lead in everything, but maybe in this area we do. And I'm just wondering what you think the key elements of competition are that we need to be aware of.
We certainly need to catch up in this area. And the reason is that as other countries move to electrify faster, their supply base gets larger. Their supply base has the economies of scale. They have access to the technologies that our supply base doesn't have. And then we just fall farther behind. So, we're, believe strongly in the Biden administration's infrastructure plan. We think there's a number of elements in there, both on the private side as well as on the public side, that can really help us accelerate faster, create jobs here, put the supply base here, and that's driven by demand. It has to be driven by vehicle demand and by infrastructure demand, and the supply base and the manufacturing will come right along with it. The market's ready.
Yeah, and another part of this question, again, thinking about it strategically, I've been talking to a gentleman named, you may know, John Evans, who is the CEO of Lithium Americas, and they mine and bring lithium out of Nevada, but they're also, cover the Americas. But, I'm kind of getting a short tutorial where Australia has a number of these sites, but around the world, whether it's in Africa and whatnot, China has gotten, control or significant posture in a lot of these lithium. How important is the lithium race for us, and are we in the right place? Because I know that's such a key part, or I've been told it's such a key part of the electric vehicle side of this equation.
Well, certainly for the remainder of this decade, there's nothing from an ingredient standpoint more important than lithium in terms of the battery cell manufacturing. And you're right, China is strategically moved in many other countries to source and control the source of lithium. So we are behind, but it's not futile. There is a lot of opportunity for us to make big inroads in this area. We just have to do it now.
And let me just finally, Jack, I should know this, but where are you located? Where are your sites? Where are your workers in the United States?
So I'm sitting today in Burlingame, California, which is in the heart of Silicon Valley. And, that's where our company is headquartered. And it's really headquartered here because this is the innovation center of the United States when it comes to battery system engineering. If you want to design battery systems, come to Silicon Valley because this is where all the action is. So we do our development here. We do some manufacturing here. But then also in Los Angeles, in the City of Industry, we have a brand new automated battery line where we take cells and we make battery packs, battery systems out of that. We also make transit vehicles there. And then in Greenville, South Carolina, we have our largest transit bus manufacturing facility there also.
Now, you've said, I know I said the last question, but with one more. You've actually commented, you said, in transit buses, that the market size is about 5,000, 6,000 a year. But you sort of scoffed at that in this comment I see here. You said that's such a small amount when you kind of look at the broader trucking industry. Just for our audience, what is the scale of what's achievable when you get to when we get to the point of a trucking sector transition?
Sure. Well, just to be careful, the transit market here is critically important to us, and we love this.
So I withdraw the word scoff.
Okay. So from a size standpoint, you're right. It's 5,000-6,000. There's 35,000 school buses sold in the United States and Canada every year. There's 100,000 Class 6-7 vehicles like we just announced today with Roush and Penske, and then depending on the year, there's between 200,000 and 300,000 on-road vehicles, so Class 8 vehicles that are either going across the country in a sleeper or regional haul or concrete mixers or garbage trucks. So, you can see if you go from a market of 5,000 up to, markets of hundreds of thousands of opportunity here just in the U.S. and Canada.
Well, Jack Allen, Chairman and CEO of Proterra, thank you for helping us to understand a little bit more of the dimensions of what's going on with e-trucks and zero-emission trucks. Thank you very much. We hope you'll come back and let us know how you do as we go down this road, so to speak.
Be happy to, Steve. Thanks for being with you and your audience today.
Thank you.